Hey guys, it's Chris. From its discovery in space to potential life forms, join me as I reveal 8 of the greatest discoveries from Mars. There's a lot going on and I love Mars, so let's dig into it. Number 8. Its discovery. To be clear, Mars could have been discovered at virtually any point in the history of humans, so long as they just looked up in the sky at the right time and noticed the bright red dot that was unlike anything that was up amongst the other stars and the moon. So by that token, it's impossible to know the exact date of when people noticed it was likely a planet, and documented evidence of Mars goes back at least 4,000 years. However, if you want to put a name to the person that first truly proposed that Mars was a planet, that would be legendary astronomer Nicolaus Copernicus. He formulated a theory that he published in 1543 that stated that Mars and other bodies of mass in space, just stars or space rocks, actually entire planets. When he published the paper outlining this, it got a lot of attention, as the misconceptions of space in regard to the Earth being the center of the universe and the sun revolving around the Earth were already being challenged. This theory got even more people to consider that the sun was the center of the solar system and that these planets were orbiting it. So while it's not possible to know exactly when Mars was discovered, this one proposition of it being a planet had a big impact on how humanity viewed the stars. Number 7. Methane on Mars. By and large, one of the biggest questions about Mars is the one about whether life has ever existed on the planet. And the answer is more complicated than people realize. Because while Mars is a barren planet now, there are some scientists who believe that at one point in time there may have been some kind of life there. This was proven in part recently through the discovery of methane on Mars via the Curiosity rover. And if you don't understand why this is important, well, methane is a gas that can be made both naturally through either the world itself, mixing land and water in certain ways, but can also be made by organic life, as certain kinds of microbes are able to literally exhale methane. So, to the surprise of many, in June 2019, the Curiosity rover not only detected methane on Mars in the Gale crater, but it was at a level not previously detected before on Mars. It was at 21 parts per billion, which for the record is much higher than anything detected on the red planet previously, thus making scientists wonder what exactly is happening on Mars to cause such a surge. Should this be organic life, it would mean that microbes of some kind are likely living underneath the surface of the planet. If that's true, it could also mean that there is other life just waiting to be found within the planet in certain places. Potentially, of course. Both these discoveries are breakthroughs in astrobiology. Ingloos Tenkata, an astrobiologist at the Utrecht University in the Netherlands, said in a written commentary on papers published about the discovery, noting the question of whether life may have originated or existed on Mars is a lot more opportune now that we know that organic molecules were present on its surface in the distant past. That being said, NASA isn't stating there is life on Mars just yet. It's very possible that the methane is somehow coming from a natural reaction, as the methane was found in a place that was formerly a lake, or so it's believed. So a natural creation is still possible, so they're being cautious as they research further. With our current measurements, we have no way of telling if the methane source is biology or geology. Principal investigator Paul Mahaffey of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland said in a statement, "Regardless, it's an important find and could be one that changes the way we look at Mars going forward." Number 6. Extraterrestrial meteor. On Mars, the first ever extraterrestrial meteor was found in 2005 by the Opportunity rover, making this a big moment in the exploration and history of the red planet. The meteor itself was about the size of a basketball and made mostly of iron and nickel. After being found at the landing site for the Opportunity rover, the meteorite was spotted, examined, and then surveyed at length by the rover. While the rock itself didn't reveal too much, the teams that were behind the discovery and the Opportunity rover noted that it could lead to many future discoveries involving meteors on Mars. So what fraction of the rocks on the plains are meteorites? We haven't really thought much about meteorites until now, but this discovery has really opened our eyes to the question. As we work to answer it, we may learn quite a bit about the long-term history of the plains, noted Stephen Squires of Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, and principal investigator for the science instruments on both opportunity. Number 5. A tsunami on Mars? One of the reasons that NASA and other organizations are working hard to explore Mars with all sorts of technology is to see how the planet came to be as it is right now. One big theory that has been thrown around by many is that at one point in time, a massive meteor crash caused a massive tsunami that helped create part of the landscape that we see now, which would indeed be a big part of its history. So what do they base this theory on? At first, it was by looking at rocks on Mars that had a very distinct water-like pattern on them, one that would tie into the notion that waves were going across them and then receded. This theory was put out by 2 teams in 2016. Now, more evidence is being presented to potentially prove this theory. Recent discoveries are pointing to Lomonosov, a 90-mile-wide crater on the surface of Mars being the impact point for a meteor that could have caused the tsunami. We know for a fact that Mars has been impacted by meteors of many sizes over the years, due to the fact that certain meteorites from Mars' surface have been found on Earth. So this theory isn't just plausible, it's very believable. There are those who refute this theory, though, saying that the impact needed to cause a massive tsunami that would have shaped the landscape was odds greater than winning the lottery. Both sides of this theory are still conducting research into it. Number 4. Blue clouds. Mars is known as the red planet, and many people think of it as just that visually. But that's not all that the planet has to offer. Mainly, it has clouds, blue clouds, and for a long time, no one understood why they were there on the planet. But now, a study from scientists studying Mars seems to indicate that clouds are nothing more than smoke caused by meteors and other space rocks slamming into the surface of Mars. The theory in study states that every day, 2 to 3 tons of meteors, comets, and more hit the surface of the planet. And when they do, they bring up smoke particles into the air and thus create a kind of blue cloud. This was tested by computer simulations, and the results paint the theory as likely. Furthermore, the tests indicate that these meteor impacts help raise the temperature of the planet at points, which has intrigued scientists who want to learn more about how space as a whole can affect a planet's climate. Number 3. Blueberries. To be clear, no, these are not actual blueberries. Rather, they're rocks that were found on Mars by the rover known as Discovery back in 2004. They were called that in part because of their color, but also because they were tiny-shaped rocks that were filled with iron. What's more, they were everywhere in the landing site for the Discovery, though how they got there and why they were there has baffled scientists both then and now. Though no definitive measure or reason has been given, one very likely possibility is that it was a result of various chemical reactions on the planet, one of which would have to include water. No matter what the exact chemistry of these spherules was to start, the fact that they're there tells us that a lot of liquid water moved through these rocks over time. Briony Hogan, a planetary scientist at Purdue University in Indiana, told Space.com, but if that's the case, and they can find out how the blueberries were formed, it would paint a much bigger picture of how Mars was when it was likely a very wet planet. Number 2. The beginning of terraforming. The idea of terraforming Mars is not a new idea. It's been proposed by many over the years. And to those who don't know, terraforming a planet simply means adapting it through various means in order to make it a habitable place or a more habitable place. And many theories have been proposed to try and do that to Mars. One of the more promising theories, though, is a discovery that we could use the greenhouse effect to make regions of Mars better to live in. This regional approach to making Mars habitable is much more achievable than global atmospheric modification, said Robin Wordsworth, assistant professor of environmental science and engineering at Harvard John A. Paulson School of Engineering and Applied Sciences in the Department of Earth and Planetary Science. Unlike the previous ideas to make Mars habitable, this is something that can be developed and tested systematically with materials and technology we already have. But how would this be done? By spreading the surface of Mars with silica aerogels, which are porous, and thus when they're brought into the atmosphere, they can send light through while also helping trap heat. Spread across a large enough area, you wouldn't need any other technology or physics. You would just need a layer of this stuff on the surface, and underneath you would have permanent liquid water, said Wordsworth. Thanks to the light coming through, photosynthesis would still occur. And with a thicker atmosphere, humanity would be protected from radiation and other harmful things that currently bombard Mars. While all the details are not worked out yet, this discovery could lead to a very different looking Mars in the future. Number 1. Water on Mars. Of all the discoveries on Mars made over the years and centuries, perhaps none mattered more to Earth than that of the definitive discovery that there was indeed water on Mars. This discovery was made back in 2012. However, it's been speculated upon for hundreds of years, as research on the planet racked up. At present, the water on Mars can be found through its polar ice caps, which is the places where humanity will likely start colonizing Mars in the 2020 decade missions to the planet in attempts to live on another world. However, more research is being done on the planet to see where else water is potentially, and if it can be utilized by humanity in any way, such as how there is a small amount of water vapor in the atmosphere despite the atmosphere not being as thick or robust as Earth's. As noted, this find is key in the desire for humanity to go to Mars as a second planet to live on. For without a significant source of water for humanity to obtain in one form or another, they cannot survive for long periods of time without great assistance. This also paints the history of Mars in different ways, and new findings in places like the Gale crater show that many lakes and even rivers were once present on Mars, and traces of them have been left behind. They're under study right now, including the finding of special kinds of clay. Thanks for watching. What did you think of these great discoveries on Mars? Which of these was the most interesting to you? Which one was the most surprising? Do you know of any other discoveries on Mars that we should talk about? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to World List, and I'll see you next time.